On the 8th of June 2020, in Government Gazette number 43414, I released directions in terms of the Disaster Management Act for criteria to return to public and private higher education campuses as part of a risk-adjusted strategy for a phased-in return from level 3 then of the national COVID-19 lockdown. These criteria were developed in consultation with the sector, including representatives from Universities South Africa representing the Vice-Chancellors, the South African College Principals Organization representing the principals of TVET colleges, trade unions and staff associations, as well as the South African Union of Students and the Council on Higher Education. Institutions have been implementing their own student return strategies in line with their teaching and learning and campus readiness plans, and under level 3, up to 33% of students have been returning to campus as per our last guidelines and framework. I must say we are meeting here today just over a week after President Cyril Ramaphosa announced the shift from alert level 3 in terms of the lockdown and dealing with COVID-19 to level 2. So today we've come to brief you about what is to happen in the post-school education and training sector now that we are at level 2. I wish to say that each institution has taken a different approach to the risk-adjusted phased-in return, dependent on their context and readiness and in line with their own detailed institutional plans and strategies. As a Department of Higher Education and Training, we have maintained regular communication with the sector, working with Universities South Africa, as I have said, and the South African College principals, as well as individual institutions. We have also put in place a bi-monthly monitoring process through which all public institutions are reporting and which lays the basis for further engagement with the department where necessary. I'm grateful for the support of our institutions who have agreed to this process and who have been submitting regular reports and responding to requests for information. Sibonga kubo bonke esiqhubeka nokubambisana nabo ekubhekaneni naleli gciwane ngomsebenzi okufanele ukuthi siwenze wokuzama ukuthi sisindise impilo sibe futhi sifuna ukuthi lo nyaka wokufunda ungalimali kakhulu. Now, this is an important part of our national effort to contain the spread of the virus, keep our students and staff as safe as possible, and work in solidarity to do everything possible, as I have said, to save the academic year, and ensure that all students are given a fair opportunity to complete the academic year. We are very much committed to that. However, we have to remain vigilant about the necessary physical distancing, safety and cleaning protocols to ensure that we continue to save lives while we work towards saving the academic year. On a sad note, I must report that we have lost 80 members of our public higher education community to deaths that are related to COVID-19 complications. Of these, 35 were staff members and 9 students from universities and 36 from our technical vocational education and training TVET colleges, with 11 students and 25 staff members. We mourn these losses of staff as a ministry and the loss of lives also for students in our universities and colleges, and wish to send our condolences to the families, friends and colleagues of those who have succumbed to this illness. We also wish to express further condolences to the relatives of those who are in our sector that have been lost through this. Let me start by giving a report on universities, on what is going to happen. Qale ngodaba lwamanyuvesi ukuthi kuzokwenzakalani emanyuvesi njengoba sizochaza namhlanje emva kwesimemezelo sikamongameli sangesonto elidlule. In terms of the most recent monitoring report as of 6th August 2020, the total number of positive COVID-19 cases reported by our institutions is 1,552. Of these, 975 are staff and 577 are students. 115,555 students had been issued with permits to come onto campuses for teaching and learning and research purposes. This amounts to approximately 20% of the contact student population. Some institutions are still implementing the phased return of the first 33% of students to their campuses. On a daily basis, we wish to say 29,624 staff and students are screened entering university campuses. It is assumed, of course, that with this number, not all students issued with a permit are returning to campuses. Some may be choosing to continue to work remotely from home. The relatively low number of daily screenings may also be linked to the management of activity on campuses, in that students are not all arriving on campus every day but are attending campus when it is necessary. In terms of return to residences, there were 33,985 students living in university-owned residences as at the 6th of August. This is approximately 28% of the residence capacity in the system. In addition, institutions reported that there were a further 27,177 students living in university-leased and managed accommodation, 12,474 students living in university-accredited accommodation, and 9,899 students living in private accommodation that had been vetted by universities. Our latest monitoring reports show that while challenges do remain in the system, all universities have made significant progress in their teaching and learning strategies and campus safety strategies, which have included implementing various methods for remote learning, distributing devices and data to students, distributing learning materials in other forms directly to students, training staff, communicating regularly with staff and students, and adhering to protocols that keep staff and students safe on campuses and in residences. On matters relating to health and safety in our institution, I wish to say that all of our institutions have prepared their campuses in line with the higher health protocol, our own organization that has been helping us in this regard, as well as health and safety committees at campuses. I do wish to point out that in our meetings with the trade unions, they've raised this matter which is of concern, that not all of our campuses have got health and safety committees. Now, these committees are compulsory in law, whether there's COVID-19 or not, even more so now that we are faced with the scourge of COVID-19. So all of our institutions, we call upon management to know that if they've not established health and safety committees, they are breaking the law, and in this instance also, they are depriving themselves of involving both workers and students in the task of confronting COVID-19. I have raised this with the Vice Chancellor, as I've also raised it with the college principals. Institutions will need to continue to be vigilant and prioritize health and safety of staff and students, while at the same time ensuring continued and more intense support for teaching and learning to ensure that the academic year is saved. In addition, Just some figures that are important to share with the public. Number of staff and students who are quarantined are 2,040 because of being suspected or having been in contact with people who have tested positive. Number of staff and students who have requested to self-isolate are 2,076. That's the data as at 6th of August, as I say. Number of reported deaths in our universities, staff is 35 and students is 9. And number of students offered with permit are approximately 18% of the total contact student population. Now let me come directly now to level 2 plans for universities. All universities have plans in place for remote multimodal teaching and learning and the controlled return of students to campus-based tuition in line with the criteria published in the relevant government gazette. According to the criteria developed, I am happy to report that under level 2 of the lockdown, it will be possible for us now to allow for up to a maximum of 66% of students to return to university campuses. Kusho ukuthi siyavula futhi sesivulele enye ingxenye yabafundi ingxenye yesithathu ukuthi ibuyele emanyuvesi njengoba sasikade ngoJune sivulele ingxenye yesithathu yokuqala sesivulela manje ingxenye yesithathu yesibili. This will be done in terms of the detailed COVID-19 management plans in place across the sector and to ensure the continued safety of students and staff while allowing for greater access to campus teaching and learning for more students. In terms of the criteria, the following categories of students will be able now to return under level 2. The first category of students who are now going to return as part of this 1/3, it's all groups that had been prioritized to return in level 3 but could not be accommodated due to the maximum campus carrying capacity having been reached. Shouthi ababesalele ekuqaleni kule ngxenye yesithathu yokuqala yibo manje abazobuyela ngoba sasingekho isikhala esanele ukwenza isiqiniseko sokuthi akukho ukugcwala okuzodala ukuthi singakwazi ukulandela umgomo ukuthi abafundi nabafundisi bangasondelana eduze. The second group will be students in all years of study who require laboratory and technical equipment to complete the academic year. The third group will be students in all years of study who require practical placements, experiential learning, workplace-based learning to complete the academic year. Of course, provided the workplaces and platforms are open and prepared. And the next category that's going back this time is all first-year students in all undergraduate programs. So those are the groups of students who are now going to go back as the second 1/3. All other students will continue to be supported through remote multimodal teaching, learning, and assessment until they can return to campus. It is recognized that each institution will determine the implementation of these criteria in terms of their own academic programs and plans. Some have been asking then, what about the last 1/3? The last 1/3, as per our plans now, will return to universities when we move to level 1. So far, then, they will continue working remotely through the multimodal learning and teaching mechanisms that have been put in place by the universities. We have been doing everything possible to ensure that we support institutions to respond in the best possible way to the many challenges that have arisen during the pandemic. This has included the reprioritization of funds to support the COVID-19 response at our public universities. On risk assessment during this period, each institution has its own operational plan based on a risk assessment linked to its operating conditions, location, and context. What this means, amongst other things, is that the focus now must really be on institutions and on campuses. We call on all our stakeholders to focus at that level because that is where things are happening. Ngamanye amazwi, umsebenzi omningi manje usezikhungweni la kufundwa khona. La kufanele senze isiqiniseko ukuthi zonke izinto zokuphepha nezinto zokufunda zisesimweni esifanele. Institutions submitted their plans to the department on their 33% return of students to campus and have been requested to submit updated plans for the 66% return by yesterday. And they have indeed submitted. We are analyzing these plans and we will be updating the public as and when we analyze this information and give further guidelines on what is to happen. The department also receives status reports on a wide number of readiness and operational indicators from all institutions on a fortnightly basis. Ningangicishe amanzi. Amanzi ayimpilo. Amanzi ayimpilo. Njengoba sifuna abafundi bethu nje bephilile, nami ngifuna ukubajoyina ngiphile ngokuthi ngikwazi ukuphuza amanzi. Ngiyaxolisa. According to the latest report, 14 of our universities are deemed to be at low risk. We have listed them there as we will be releasing this report. Maybe I should read them. The 14 universities that are at low risk is Cape Peninsula University of Technology, Nelson Mandela University, Northwest University, Rhodes University, Solplaatje University, University of Cape Town, University of Johannesburg, University of KwaZulu-Natal, University of Pretoria, University of South Africa, that's UNISA, Stellenbosch University, University of the Western Cape, University of the Witwatersrand, and University of Zululand. 6 other universities are deemed to be at medium risk, which those are Durban University of Technology, Tshwane University of Technology, University of Limpopo, University of Mpumalanga, University of the Free State, and University of Venda. The last 6 universities which are deemed to be at very high risk in terms of being ready to do what is expected of them is the Central University of Technology, is Mangosuthu University of Technology, it's Fako Makgato University, University of Fort Hare, Fal University of Technology, and the Walter Sisulu University. Of course, there may be changes from the data that we received yesterday, which we hope that will be changes for the better and improvement. And as I have said, we will keep on updating the public of the situation. Maybe just to explain about this readiness, we've got about 21 indicators that cover issues related to safety, issues related on whether the institutions are able to implement multimodal learning, as well as a whole range of other indicators to ensure that universities are ready. That is how we are categorizing that. There are those at low risk, at medium risk, and at high risk. Some universities have not adequately resumed academic teaching and learning for a significant proportion of their student populations since March, when the recess period started. This, of course, poses a very serious risk. The department is currently engaging with all medium and high-risk institutions, the 12 identified above, to secure commitments and actions to lower risks and expedite operational capabilities to ensure successful completion of the 2020 academic year. Special support measures will be put in place to ensure academic activities resume at an accelerated pace at these universities. But what we must say at this point, these institutions that have got challenges, we call upon all stakeholders, staff, management, student leadership, to work together to tackle the problems. And not just to stand from afar and say, we will simply protest and say, why is this not happening? Why is that happening there? Rather, we are calling upon all stakeholders to work together. You will understand why we are saying this for the things that I'm going to be outlining just now about the readiness and the challenges that are facing our universities. In this regard, institutions have reported differential levels of responsiveness in terms of their progress in completing the requirements for the 2020 academic year and readiness for the onset of the 2021 program. I've been concerned about the wide range of variation in respect of these two aspects, given that they have various kinds of negative implications for the system. We need to strike the right balance between the imperative of enabling institutions to complete the requirements for the 2020 academic year in order to give all students a fair chance, and the need to ensure the start of the 2021 academic year in ways that do not render the system unmanageable or impairing the principle of equity of access across the system. For this reason, I have met with both the COVID-19 Ministerial Task Team, which is chaired by our Deputy Minister, Bhuti Manamela, and the Vice-Chancellors in the last week to impress upon the principle to agree on a fixed period within which all institutions must complete the current academic year and a fixed period of starting dates for the opening of the 2021 academic year. As it stands now, and this is very important, we are targeting all institutions to complete the 2020 academic year by the end of February 2020, with starting dates for the new 2021 academic year ranging from 15 March to 15 April 2021. Let me repeat this. As things stand now, we are targeting that all institutions, that is our universities, public universities, to complete the 2020 academic year by the end of February next year, with starting dates for the new 2021 academic year ranging from 15 March to 15 April next year. All efforts will be made to ensure that outlier institutions, Bayanda will be impressed with me here, all efforts will be made to ensure that outlier institutions get up to speed to meet this requirement. Yabona manje ngifundiswa insizwe yakanongoma isingisi. Bengingakwazi ukulipronounce leli gama le-outlier ngoba angilijwayele. Ngithi hawu madoda ngiyofundiswa insizwe yakanongoma ngithi ngiyingwenya yakadambuza nje. The detailed management of these two processes across the system will be communicated by the department once all the necessary consultations have been completed. Iyezwakala-ke manje le ndaba. Njengoba sithi akubanjiswane nje ingoba lo nyaka ka-2020 asizukwazi ukuqeda. Ngisho kaphi? Ngelapha ngathi February 2020, it's February 2021. Lo nyaka sowuqeda ngoFebruary 2021 ngokweinhlelo zethu. Mazonke izinto zihamba kahle. Siqale unyaka wokufunda omusha phakathi kwa-15 kaMashi no-15 ka-April ngonyaka ozayo. Kusho ukuthi asikho isikhathi. Njengoba sithi akubuyelwe nje kufundwe, akufundwe ngempela. Kuthi nala kuney'nkinga khona sibambisane ukuthi siyixazulula kanjani iy'nkinga. Sizama ukugwema ukujikijelana ngamatshe ey'khungweni zethu zemfundo ephakeme. Now, what are our directives that we have given as the department? The protocol governing the staggered return of students to campuses must hold. In other words, what we have announced that we are taking the second 1/3 category of students must stand, and the last 1/3 when we reach level 1. We don't know as yet when we will reach level 1. Of course, we'll be consistently monitoring the situation very closely. So that staggered return stands. Any uncontrolled return would be highly irresponsible and place lives of students and staff at risk. We met with stakeholders in the COVID-19 task team that I have referred to on Friday last week, chaired by our Deputy Minister, to secure stakeholder support for this broad strategy. We are pleased to say that there is broad support in the sector from all the stakeholders. The return of students up to 66% as per return protocol announced in March will now proceed under specific conditions to be laid out by our Department of Higher Education and Training to all institutions. Institutions submitted their updated plans yesterday, as I have said, 25th of August, and are expected to begin reintegrating further groups of students up to 66% as from the 1st of September. Because they must be ready, we must give them time. As we said last time, we give institutions 2 to 3 weeks to get ready and then start receiving the students. This will also allow for return of students, as I have said, facing severe difficulties to continue with remote learning due to either family circumstances, connectivity problems, or other adverse circumstances. All students that cannot be safely reintegrated will continue to be supported through remote multimodal teaching and learning and assessment until they can return to campus. And we still commit, no student will be left behind. They may not be able to be starting and finishing at the same time because of these conditions that we are facing, but we want to ensure that no student will be left behind. International students studying at South African universities currently outside South Africa, unfortunately, will only be able to return to their campuses during level 1 once international travel resumes. Priority may have to be given to registrars and senior medical students in this category should international travel be permitted under level 2. This will allow broad alignment with the Department of Basic Education, which is planning the release of the National Senior Certificate results on the 23rd of February 2020. Ngamanye amazwi sisebenzisana nomnyango lo azakwethu uMinister uMotshega wekole ukuthi kube nokuqondana phakathi kokuphuma kwemiphumela kamatikuletsheni kanye nokuqala konyaka ukufunda kwamanyuvesi ngonyaka ozayo. On digital learning devices, I had tasked the National Student Financial Aid Scheme, NSFAS, with the procurement process of the digital learning devices for NSFAS funding students currently registered at universities and TVET colleges. Although, as mentioned in a previous media briefing, the provision of such devices is extremely urgent as part of the government's response to COVID-19. But a formal, transparent, competitive tender process was followed. Those who are already saying, DG, there is corruption in this tender, ake bame kancane ake bengajahi. Engathi sebelala bephupha corruption nala ingekho khona. Asibazi ukuthi bakuthatha phi lokho. Ngizocela nje ukuchazela izwi ukuthi kwenzekani ngalento yama devices. These are facts. We adopted this route of an open, transparent, competitive bid instead of an emergency tender process to avoid any deviation from the normal competitive procurement process. The reason for this was our serious concern that the process must be beyond reproach given recent experiences of reported corrupt practices experienced around COVID-19 procurement of PPEs. We want to say that we are all committed to fighting corruption, but let's not in the process of fighting corruption want to position ourselves in a populist way and begin to talk about things that we have not officially communicated about. Judge us on what we have communicated, which is what we are going to communicate today. The administrator of NSFAS has informed me on Tuesday this week that none of the bids competing for the supply of learning devices as specified in the bid process had achieved the mandatory requirements as required in the bid document. Unfortunately, and we want to be open and transparent about this, no tender was awarded on laptops. This is of course unfortunate and regrettable, only in the sense that procurement of learning devices will not take place right now. This may mean a delay of another month or two, unfortunately. However, we are also quite clear that the rules of good governance and due process must be followed to ensure a judicious outcome in the public interest. The ministry, myself in particular, is well aware of a campaign driven by some commercial interests and some unscrupulous elements who are using a false flag of accusations about supposed sabotage and undue interference by the department to mask their own interests in trying to gang press NSFAS into making shoddy decisions. From afresh on procuring these devices and follow the letter of the law. Government policy is clear that our procurement process must promote an inclusive economy with diverse players, with specific priority given to credible, broad-based black economic enterprises to ensure that we broaden the base of our economy. We also want to say, by the way, DG, to those who are accusing us that there are things that are unbecoming, they need to give us evidence. And often I want to say this, our experience in government is that often the people who cry foul are often the ones who are being investigated for corruption and for other unethical practices in order to try and fight back and intimidate us not to do further investigations. I want to make it clear publicly to the South African public that as Minister of Higher Education, Science and Innovation, I am not going to be intimidated by these fight back tactics. In fact, they make me to be even more committed that in my sector, I'm not going to allow any corruption or any unethical or any illegal practices. I stand firm there because this is nothing but part of a fight back campaign. And I am challenging the South African public to charge us that some of these people who are shouting loudest, what are their own business interests? Like Honorable Olomisa, he's a businessman. What are his interests? He must declare publicly where is he looking for business so that there is no suspicion that he is talking about the 600 million rands of the sitters because he himself or his companies that he's associated with may actually have interest there. Challenging those, Olomisa and others. Come out, be transparent yourself first before you actually start throwing stones. Some of them will be embarrassed as they have already been embarrassed before. But as the ministry, we are not going to allow ourselves to be distracted about this. Our task is primarily to look after all South Africans who want to access post-school education and training, and in particular, the children of the workers and the poor of this country. Although this thing of the laptops put us back in terms of the quest to access sufficient learning devices, we will stay within the law and due administrative process. The results of this process will be open for public scrutiny once the process is independently and fairly completed. Let me also add that in the same vein of transparency, I have also instructed all our institutions, DG, universities, TVET colleges, SETAs, under my 2 departments, to publish the full list of all companies that have benefited from procurement that was initiated in response to COVID-19. Zonke ikhungo ezingaphansi kwalomnyango wethu sithi azikhiphe bonke abantu abathola amathenda njengoba kusho umongameli ukuthi ke amanyuvesi ethu, amakolisi ethu, amasitha ethu awakhiphi ukuze kubonakala ukuthi obani abatholile la, ngabe bathole ngendlela eyiyo yini, njengendlela yokuthi silwise inkohlakalo. Now, once a service provider has been appointed, the learning devices will be delivered directly to the student as per address provided on the acknowledgement of debt or request for digital learning device form. NSFAS has issued guidelines to outline processes to be followed to enable students to receive these laptops. The following are the guidelines on who qualifies and terms and conditions for digital learning devices. Only contact NSFAS-funded students who are currently registered at universities and TVET colleges will qualify to receive a device. NSFAS funding policy makes provision for NSFAS-funded students studying at universities to receive a learning material allowance annually, which covers the cost of necessary learning material, books or learning device. NSFAS funding policy does not make provision for NSFAS-funded students studying at TVET colleges to receive a learning material allowance. I have therefore signed a once-off policy deviation which will allow TVET college students to receive digital devices for the 2020 academic year. Going forward, we will come back to those matters. As of now, for TVET college students is to receiving devices for the 2020 academic year. University students who are not funded in the DHET scheme of NSFAS do not qualify for this, like students who are supported by Funza Lushaka, by the Department of Social Development, by the SETAs. They do not qualify for the devices and must request their institutions who are supporting them to actually supply them with these. Funding for digital devices and associated costs must be sourced from the available 2020 funding budget. Trimester 1 and Semester 1 students at TVET colleges will not qualify to receive the learning devices, as these students have already written their final exams. Sebeqedile. Laba sebeqedile ngesho abazukwazi ukuthi bayithole. Sithemba ukuthi bothola umsebenzi bakwazi ukuzithengela bona ama-device okusebenza. Sizogxila kakhulu kulabafundi abasekhona ezikhungweni zethu. These learning devices are meant to assist students in completing their 2020 academic year. However, Trimester 1 and Semester 1 students who will be enrolling for Trimester 2 and Semester 2 will qualify to receive the devices. But all these details can be found from the institutions. We are merely outlining the framework. Students will have an option to accept or decline the offer of a digital learning device. University students who have opted to receive the learning device will receive them on a loan-to-buy basis because we want these devices to be owned by the students. The cost of the device would be added to the student fee account, and the student will have an option to purchase it by settling the cost with the institution, or purchase it by providing consent to NSFAS to withhold the learning material allowance in future academic years, or return it in good working order to the institution. Students who will exit the higher education system at the end of the 2020 academic year must return the device in a good condition or purchase the device at a price agreed with the institution. Failure to comply will result in the student's fee account having a positive balance. This includes students that will graduate, students that may exit because of academic progression of the N+ rule violations, or students that may opt not to come back in 2021. On the NSFAS application cycle, the National Student Financial Aid Scheme 2021 application cycle opened on the 3rd of August this year and will close at the end of November this year. To date, NSFAS has already received over 89,547 applications. Given current extreme circumstances as a direct result of COVID-19, we are anticipating an influx of applications by the closing date of applications of 30 November 2020, with predictions of a higher number of applications compared to the previous years. It is still early days though, so we will have a better picture in a month or two. Sicela abafundi ke baqale bafake izicelo labo abafuna ukuqhubeka abafuna ukuthi baxhaswe ilesikhwama sikahulumeni iNSFAS. bangalindi kuze kube sekugcineni. Umuntu afuna ukuyofaka isicelo ngomhla ka-30 November sekuvalwa. Let me touch on this issue of NSFAS beneficiaries who provided incorrect information. The National Student Financial Aid Scheme has recently removed from their list a total of 5,000 students who were incorrectly funded on the basis of providing incorrect information for the 2020 academic year, on the basis of inaccurate information supplied in the original applications. This decision by NSFAS was due to recent financial information obtained from the South African Revenue Service, which revealed that there were discrepancies on the total household income declared by the students and verified household income as per SARS data. The data from SARS showed that these students came from families who had household income that exceeded the maximum threshold of 350,000 per annum. It was therefore this decision that led NSFAS to say we must not continue to fund these students. NSFAS has issued a communique to all affected students, notifying them of termination of their funding status and the process to follow if they dispute the findings. The affected students will have 14 days from the date they receive the SMS communication to petition this decision by submitting proof of family income or change of income to NSFAS for review. These documents need to be submitted to NSFAS via email at incomereview, one word, at nsfas.org.za. But we will actually post this information on the website and other media platforms. At this point, we must raise the strongest concern and objection to any students who have deliberately submitted false information to game or con the system. This is clearly a case of unethical and corrupt behavior. Cannot be justified. Where proven, legal action will be taken against these culprits by NSFAS, and further NSFAS will seek to reclaim the funds from those students who were attempting to defraud the scheme by misrepresenting their financial status. We want to say to all South Africans, corruption must be fought wherever it occurs, irrespective of who is involved. We can't say because it's students who are involved in corruption, then we will have student solidarity to actually defend corrupt behavior. If we are fighting corruption in the supply of PPEs, if we are fighting corruption in all of government and in the private sector, we can't then have students who lie that actually their parents earn less than they are actually lying, and then we say we are going to have student solidarity with them. We can't have solidarity with corruption. As government, we are standing firm on this, and we are calling the whole of the South African society to support government on this stance to fight corruption, even if it comes from student ranks. There is no justification that just because you are a student, you must be allowed to get away with corruption. We are aware, of course, of financial pressures as government on many students from family households above the NSFAS threshold during these difficult economic times, and appeal to the private and philanthropic sectors to raise levels of assistance to other categories of financially needy students who fall outside of the government funding policy. Although ourselves as government, we are looking at what kind of help can be given to these students in future through a system that we can devise working together with the private sector. On TVET colleges, DG, unfortunately this is quite a comprehensive report that we have to give. TVET college students returned to campuses in a staggered approach from 10 June 2020. The last cohort of students returned on 27 July 2020. So all the TVET college students had returned by the 27th of July, as per the approved revised academic calendar. of the 2020 academic year. Although all students return to campus in a staggered approach from 10th June, the last cohort should have returned yesterday, 25th of August, as per the approved revised academic calendar. Since the return of students to campuses, colleges have successfully run classes in compliance with COVID-19 requirements, including providing for physical distancing through the splitting of classes. In addition, the national examinations for the engineering studies students was successfully conducted and concluded in July 2020. Umalusi has since reported that it is satisfied with the conduct of the examinations, which adhered to the protocol set out for COVID-19. The remainder of the academic year will see decreasing pressure on TVET colleges as semester students will write exams next month and go into recess for the remainder of the year. Colleges will open registration for trimester 2 students as soon as trimester 1 results are released, following the standardization process which was scheduled for the 24th of August 2020. That's 2 days ago. Examination activities has thus far been conducted in compliance with the revised academic calendar for 2020 and will continue until the completion of the NCV exams on the 11th of December 2020. Based on the above, the move to level 2 will not adversely affect operations in TVET colleges if the compulsion for physical distancing, the compulsory wearing of masks, and provision of sanitization, washing of hands, all remain firmly in place. We do provide in our statement detailed statistics on deaths in the TVET college sector, on people who have been students and staff. Fortunately, it's not very high, the totals, which is pleasing. Of course, one life lost is too many, but fortunately, it's not high, the number of infections. So we will post this statement. We can look at details. We are concerned, however, that 16,660 students in total missed their internal continuous assessment, which constitute 5% of the total enrollment. This means these students will not be eligible for the examination. However, we are pleased to say non-teaching staff attendance remains at 85% high. On community education teaching centers, all we want to say in summary, Chair, DG, they are returning because they are using the schools. So as the Department of Basic Education returns, they are also going to be returning. And we want to appreciate the support we get from Higher Health, as well as the fact that the Health and Welfare SETA has committed to provide 1,800 students interns who will help with the maintenance of health protocols in the community education and training colleges, working with Higher Health. As a department, we are also looking at different options to appoint cleaners for the learning sites. On skills development, the key issue that I want to raise is that as a result of the payment holiday to employers of 4 months, the SETAs and the skills levy system has lost 8.1 billion rands this year. Now, this is a huge amount of money that will affect many, many learning programs that are important. But nevertheless, we are engaging with the social partners at NETLEC and the SETAs to mitigate against the decline of the skills levy collections. And also we are managing the return of the students in a phased way in line with the risk-adjusted strategy. In conclusion, masasiphetha ngoba ayikho indaba engenasiphetho. I would like to acknowledge the significant support that has been provided by Higher Health. Dr. Ramnik, we appreciate that, to the university and college system. The many forms of support offered by Higher Health to institutions, including advice, guidelines and protocols, training and support for mental health, have been critical to our institutions at this difficult time. We have alerted all stakeholders to the risk of new infection outbreaks during the implementation of lockdown level 2 measures as a result of the concentration of larger numbers. nayo into esifuna ukuyigcizelela njengoba ibalo sesizokwanda zabafundi ababuyela ezikhungweni zethu zemfundo ephakeme ingozi izoba nkulu yokuthi lesifo futhi sisingene ingakho kufanele sizigade ngempela akusho ukuthi ukubuyela ngaleli nani esibuyela ngayo sekusho ukuthi isifo noma igciwane lihambile igciwane lisekhona kuzofanele sizigade kakhulu. For this reason, all institutions have been requested to update and increase their health response protocols and support system, including on-campus behavior management, sanitation, and cleaning, testing, diagnostic, isolation, and quarantine facilities. I know this has been a challenging time for many students, a time of uncertainty and anxiety for all. We understand that. We sympathize with that. We'll do all we can on our side to make life easier for you so that we complete the academic year. We have been forced into this situation by a global pandemic, and students have had to grapple with new ways of studying, often in difficult circumstances. I do applaud the many students who have adapted to these difficult circumstances and develop new ways of learning. I must also acknowledge that this has been a challenging time for the academic staff of our institutions who have had to adapt rapidly to new forms of teaching and student support, and who have shown commitment to learning themselves and supporting students, often across multiple different platforms. I commend this work as well as the work of institutional managers, administrators, and support staff who have worked hard to adapt to the necessary changes. But let me particularly also take this opportunity to express my most sincere appreciation, in particular to the ordinary frontline workers, such as security guards, cleaning staff, and administrative staff, whose crucial role in the fight against the spread of the virus is often not properly recognized. Funa ukuzakalisa ukubonga kakhulu kubasebenzi isikhathi esiningi siye sibakhohlwa. Abasebenzi abenza isiqiniseko ukuthi zihlanzekile indawo esikuzona nabagada izakhiwo zethu. These workers continue to play a very important role to ensure that as people move about and enter different work and other spaces, they do not spread the virus or expose themselves and others. To our Deputy Minister, I want to say thank you, but also tell you a story that you might not have realized. The former British Labour Party leader and Member of Parliament, Jeremy Corbyn, has made an important point that COVID-19 has made a very important revelation in our lives. That revelation is to finally awaken the world to the important roles that cleaners have become important, security have become important, workers that many people don't care about. I have also observed, by the way, on my part, just my own observation, it's not exclusive to me, that this virus has turned things upside down. Have you ever thought that an ordinary security guard would ever be the one who takes the temperature of a medical professional as they enter the health or other facility? Ubani wayecabanga ukuthi umsebenzi nje ogadile oyisecurity uyozothatha itemperature kadokotela? Uma ngabe futhi iphezulu kadokotela ungeni la, phuthuma uhambe uyobheka uyolashwa. Ngamanye amazwi lesifo noma sinzima kodwa sisifundisa ukuthi abasebenzi bakithi esibabukela phansi umsebenzi wabo ubaluleke kakhulu. Siyabonga. I also want to thank the trade union leaders and student leaders who have contributed to planning and support at institutional level. We wish you all the best as you return to our institutions. Thank you very much, DG.
Thank you very much, Minister. I trust the Minister and the Deputy Minister will indulge some of the questions from the members of the media. Can I start with Ishmael there with the callers? Do we have callers?
Thanks, DG. We don't have questions at the moment.
Okay.
Thank you.
Matikweni?
Thank you, DG. We have about 7 questions from 4 reporters.
Okay, proceed.
So the first one is from Bonga Hlulani from EWN. The first question he asks is, Minister, please elaborate on the 2020 academic year ending in February. Is that an instruction to or a suggestion? And his second question is on the 66% allowed back, and when will this happen? What is the date, is what he's asking. The next one is from Christian Duplessis from Netvac 24. His first question is, how will the department deal with the issue of prospective first-year students since matric results will only be released towards the end of February? And how will this impact on resident placements since marks are needed for the selection process? And then his second question is, have some universities decided yet when they will reopen for 2021 academic year? And he's asking for specific dates. His third question is, have some universities given dates for the current academic year? And if he's asking if there are any specifics as well. The third journalist who's asking a question is Homolemo Motumoholo. He's from UFM and also represents Newsnote Agency. He has asked if students from private institutions have complained. He's reported that students from private institutions have complained that these institutions have threatened to deregister them over non-payment, despite the fact that parents have sent proof that they have been laid off, while some are getting pay cuts due to the pandemic. He has asked, what are the plans in place to assist these students? And then the fourth reporter who has asked a question is Stephen Grooters from Newsroom Africa. He has asked one question saying that he's asking Minister to clarify his comments about Holomisa and his business interests. To avoid confusion, he's just asking for clarity in terms of which Holomisa you are speaking about, Minister. Thank you.
Okay. That's quite a bit, Minister. It's over to you.
Yeah. Why you want to come in?
Okay.
I think I missed Bonga's second question. There were two. The one was to elaborate on the 2020 ending in February.
And elaborate, you just simply said elaborate a bit more about the academic year.
Okay, yeah. Well, thank you very much for these questions. I've been scolded that I take my glasses too much out and back out. So I'm trying to discipline myself. There's a reason for that. Some of those who are complaining, they will understand it at some stage. Now, I thought that in our statement we were fairly clear that, and we said it even last time, given the long break that we had during the lockdown, we are not going to finish the academic year, the 2020 academic year in 2020. This is not an instruction. We've been working together with institutions. What I'm talking about here, Deputy Minister has been chairing this task team, knows we've been engaging. We are not prescribing or imposing anything to anyone. What we are concerned about, and we've engaged the institutions about this, is if there is too much a gap between the institutions in ending the academic year and in finishing the academic year. For instance, we have some preliminary indications now that some institutions may be able to end the academic year by November, December 2020, and others are showing that they may end in April. Now, that gap is too big. Also, of course, usually then you're better off better resourced institutions who are going to be able to do that. Which then it means they will also have a chance to be the first to take the best crop of students and leave the rest to others. We have reached an understanding with the vice chancellors that at least the gap must be not too big. It must be a gap of a month. In any case, universities never open at the same time. That is why we are saying, for all universities, we are saying by February 2020, they should finish the academic year. Those at the moment who are indicating April, we've got to work very closely with them such that they are able to move that forward. The plan is that the new academic year must start between 15th of March and 15th of April next year. And it does coincide, if matric results are going to be coming out on the 23rd, then it makes it easier then to say, okay, the students will be able to move. Of course, the students do not apply then, they start applying now, which is something we want to underline. Apply now to the TVET college or to the university. So that all what matric results do is just to show you what have you achieved and what programs you can be able to be accepted at. So we are working very closely to manage that closely. I hope that clarifies even the issue of first-year students, that they will come in between the 15th of March and the 15th of April next year. Now, the private institutions, Dr. Parker, I don't know whether maybe you have something to say about this, or DM. Private institutions have been taking a guide from us, but we are responsible for them insofar as we register them, and also we are concerned they are looking after the interest of South African students, but they are private institutions. I know that they've been taking a lead from us to say, when are we closing, when are we opening, how, and I'm sure now also they are going to be doing the same. So it's very important that we clarify that. Stephen, all what I was saying is that I don't want to be diverted by Honorable Holomisa. I don't want to be diverted by him. All what I was saying is that usually these attacks, they are not new, that are directed at me in particular. They are often because I'm trampling on toes of people who are involved in corruption or in other unethical behavior. I can easily trace the things that are in Holomisa's letter to the president, where they possibly come from, very easily. And I know why they are coming in that. All what I was saying, Stephen, is that it's important for Honorable Holomisa to be careful that it does not get used by corrupt elements to fight their fights, because if wittingly or unwittingly he is being used for that, he is going to be exposed. I can guarantee that. I can guarantee that. There's absolutely nothing wrong that I've done with my department. I'm not interfering in my department. I'm running my department, which is the task that I've been given by the president. And the other thing is that people who shout loudest like him, he has got business interests, we know that. He must not only just go and declare them in that form in parliament, he must come out publicly to say, I am raising that there must be corruption. On my side, here are my business interests, so that we know that none of these issues he is raising are because he is also having another interest other than public interest. So I'm challenging him to do that as we move forward. But all what he is saying, I want to say, is utter crap, and I will stand firm. The more he says these things, the more I'm determined to go deeper into what I believe are those people who are feeding him wrong information, to actually challenge, to actually get to the root of all unethical behavior, illegal behavior, and corruption in my department and in all my entities. I hope, Stephen, that actually clarifies what I mean.
The date of the second to that. When is it?
Oh, the last,
Yes, the second.
the last, oh, the date of
date of the
this second one that is from 1st of September. That's when we are targeting the students to come back. Now, DM, I'm sure you want to say something because you chair the STAS team all the time.
Thank you, Minister. I think there's just one question relating to, or maybe just to remark on the institutions. Is this an instruction? I think you make an important point that we are engaging with the institutions, with the vice chancellors, with the students, and with all stakeholders who are involved, and that the announcements made by the minister are as a result of consultation with all of the stakeholders. So there's no instruction. We've had several meetings with them. We've engaged with them in those platforms, and we all agree that there shouldn't be all these major disparities, particularly in terms of when institutions will be completing the academic year 2020 and reopening 2021. And I think there was a question about what will we do in terms of the results, as the grade 12 or matric results vis-a-vis the registration at universities. Again, we are working, our department is working closely with the Department of Basic Education so that we, there's no confusion in terms of their academic period, the grade 12s, the registration process, and all the work that needs to be done. And then finally, I think the question around private institutions. Yes, we've been working with with the leadership of the associations of private institutions, and I think it's quite unfortunate that with all the responsibilities that we have as the state, in terms of NSFAS students in particular, and all other students, I think it would be, we obviously, unfortunately, may not be able to do much as it relates to students from private institutions who may be deregistered, other than imploring two private institutions to make arrangements with those students so that they continue and complete the academic year, and whatever arrangements in terms of payment be made on the basis of the agreement between the students and the institution. So there isn't, at least at this point, much that that we can do. We understand the economic conditions and situation that many of the parents are faced with, and that many may have been or actually have been retrenched. They've got no employment and any source of income, and so that's why we want to implore to those private institutions to really listen to the plight of parents and students who are studying in those institutions. Thank you.
We are only going to entertain another last round. From the telephone lines, Ishmael.
We have no questions on the telephone lines.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Matikweni?
Thank you, DG. There are no questions on WhatsApp. Thank you.
I think, Minister, you were very, very thorough. You've answered everything. And I think the Minister has committed that the statement will be on the website for those who would like to get a copy. Thank you very much. I think we've come to the end of this media briefing, and thanks to the Minister and the Deputy Minister.
Thanks, Richie. Thank you very much. And thanks to everyone. Do you have to say more?
Yeah.
Okay.